Welcome everybody. Thank you for coming out on a Friday afternoon. My name's Mark Adams. I coordinate ASIC's Innovation Hub and sort of lead some of our Regtech related work, so that's why you're seeing me up front. I want to start by just welcoming you to country. So I begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples here today. So I'm going to give the floor to John Price very shortly to do a bit of a welcome to you all, but we've got a bit of a packed agenda and we're going to be bouncing back between Sydney and Melbourne, so bear with us. Hopefully, fingers crossed, everything works. But with that then, I think I'll pass straight to you, John, to do the welcome and opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mark. And I'd just like to add my welcome to Mark's introductory comments as well. Well, good afternoon all, and thank you for joining us across Australia for ASIC's 8th Regtech Liaison Forum and the last for the calendar year of 2019. It's been a particularly eventful year for us when it comes to Regtech. In a moment, my colleague Warren Day will introduce the work ASIC's been doing on a technology assistance guidance tool trial that's been referred to within ASIC creatively as the TAG tool or chatbot. This will demonstrate the results of the 4th Regtech initiative undertaken by ASIC during 2018-2019. Now, at our August symposium outlining our first Regtech initiative, my fellow Commissioner Kathy Armour set out the roadmap for what this series of Regtech initiatives has looked to achieve. And that roadmap included, first, keeping an open mind about what Regtech is capable of, with a particular interest on how it could improve customer outcomes. Second, listening and learning about the variety of Regtech available to better understand its impacts across business processes. Third, running initiatives dedicated to allowing industry to come together, network, and participate in challenging discussions. And finally, measuring the success of the work that we've done by how much of a glimpse into the future that it provides. We're excited to reflect on the Regtech initiatives that have been conducted during 2018-2019, and we'll have a session on that later today. Mark Adams, who you've just seen on the screen of the Innovation Hub and Regtech teams, will provide an initial overview of some of the key observations from the year, as well as a preview of some of the resources and initiatives that are yet to come. So we're not finished in this space by any means. Now, I'll briefly preempt Mark by saying that ASIC has always maintained that Regtech has enormous potential to help organisations build a culture of compliance. And I'd like to think that there's never been a better time for this industry to be around than at present. It has the opportunity to identify learning opportunities, save time and money relating to regulatory matters, and I think it's fair to say that participants across the series that we've had to date have not only showcased these possibilities, but also displayed Regtech's capacity to help improve customer outcomes, facilitate better accountability, and most importantly, rebuild trust within the financial services industry. Now, proving its potential through Regtech showcases and trials is arguably what drives the development of Regtech, as well as encouraging its adoption. So we see this work as particularly important. Now, despite these strong outcomes that I think we've had to date, we certainly can't be complacent. The showcases put in focus the key challenges ASIC will need to address in the coming year as we continue to explore Regtech. And these include the importance of good quality data sets for effectively training solutions. Garbage in, garbage out remains a challenge as far as data goes. concerns around new cybersecurity threats that Regtech may present, and of course a recognition that regulators need to play a greater role with other stakeholders to facilitate the development of these solutions, and that's exactly what we intend to do. Once again, Mark will address the findings of the first round of initiatives that we've conducted this calendar year in more detail and provide a preview of what ASIC has planned to continue the momentum of what we've already done. Now, I'll comment that these observations lead me to emphasise how important these sort of gatherings are to us as well. Through thought-provoking discussions such as these is exactly why there is such value in conducting each of our industry engagements. By bringing leaders and interesting stakeholders together, it allows us to discover new avenues to explore and approach old barriers in novel ways. And it's important to emphasise that this and our other forums are inherently collaborative in nature. Put very simply, we want to hear your views and what you think about these issues. We're constantly looking to hear about the most diverse series of case studies and experiences, and encourage any of you wishing to speak to contact either our Innovation Hub or our Regtech teams, or simply speak up at the sessions that we're holding, such as the one today. Now, as a sign-off for the calendar year, I did want to offer a big thanks to the Regtech Association, who are present today, for being one of the major sources of knowledge from an industry perspective in the work we've done. And can I just say that their guidance and their leadership in this area are greatly appreciated. I'd also like to thank our fellow regulators for the work they do to contribute to this space. Each of their tailored approaches to Regtech provides invaluable knowledge that's integral to the work that we all strive towards. And there's also a need to acknowledge our international counterparts, despite them not being in the room today. And I say that because a global perspective is always necessary when working towards the provision of better consumer outcomes. And ASIC will continue to look to every opportunity to expand our work with our international colleagues on that basis. But the final thank you I'd like to give is to members of our team who've worked very hard on these Regtech initiatives. So Mark, Chiwa, Jonathan Hatch, the Innovation Hub team, and all the staff members of ASIC who've worked hard to make this a reality. Thank you on behalf of the Commission. So once again, I'd like to thank everybody in the respective rooms for their participation in these events throughout 2019. And we do truly hope to continue to collaborate with you all in 2020. Without further ado, I'll hand over to Warren Day. Thank you.
Thanks, John. By way of introduction, those who don't know me, my name is Warren Day. I have the honour of leading a large group of people at ASIC under the banner of Assessment and Intelligence. The large component teams of that group are our Misconduct and Breach Reporting team, our Licensing team, and our Small Business Engagement and Compliance team. Because I don't have a life, I also look after ASIC's Office of the Whistleblower. Nothing against whistleblowers, but we're quite busy. But today, really, we're focused on the work done in relation to the technology-assisted guidance work, and as that pertains to licensing. And we really want to let you have a look at what we've done. More importantly, not what we've done, but what our friends at Piper Alderman and Gronade have done to assist us in this work. And I just wanted to give some opening introductory comments about that. If I could go to the next slide, please. Just setting out the problem that we really wanted to address, but also how we saw the tag tool solution assisting with that is that the licensing laws, both financial services and credit, consumer credit, that we look after at ASIC and that we provide licenses for, are complex. There's a range of authorisations within a financial services licence. Credit laws are a little bit simpler, but in relation to all of them, there are extensive regulatory guidance that assists people work out how to comply and whether or not they need a licence. In fact, you won't have a month go by probably at ASIC where there's not some amendment to existing regulatory guidance or, in fact, new regulatory guidance being issued. So the simple question of do I need a licence is actually sometimes quite difficult, depending on the nature of the business, depending on the nature of the operations, depending on the nature of the services provided. So in that, we thought it was a good position and a good problem to look at whether or not a chatbot or, as we say, the tag tool could assist in providing guidance about that. And again, we were looking for guidance about that question of do I need a licence? And then obviously within a financial services perspective, not so much credit, but what are the authorisations within that I need? So really, we were looking at a problem of addressing a proof of concept about what is feasible. Similarly, though, what we wanted to get out of this is what are the learnings for us? And I'll talk about some of those in a sec, but what are the learnings for us as an organisation utilising that technology and utilising a tag tool, and what do we need so that we can develop going forward? That was important for us. Sorry, yeah, that slide, thank you. So talking about the chatbot proof of concept, we really had some expectations about a positive user experience. And part of that really was trying to work out how far could we go? Would we be able to give a yes or no? And the answer is we always knew we were never going to be able to get to a position of yes, you need a licence, no, you don't need a licence. But we wanted still a positive user experience. We obviously wanted to deal with some natural language questions and programming. We obviously were interested from a maintenance perspective. So once the tag tool was developed and in use, what is the maintenance requirements? What are the ongoing requirements? As I said, if guidance is changing regularly or new guidance is coming along on a regular basis, the need to maintain is obviously a big deal for us in that space. Scalability, we really wanted to be able to then deal with more complexities that came along, but also be adaptable and deploy to other areas of ASIC, but also other areas of regulation. So clearly, if the government then asks ASIC to look after a new area or authorise for a new type of financial service, then we want to make sure we can scale in that space as well. So we wanted to have that adaptability and scalability in that respect. But obviously then one of the expectations was that we would work out through this the ability to bring that back to ASIC. There are lots of issues in terms of the knowledge and the dealing with those things, but we really want from an IT perspective, from a business perspective, from a law perspective about what were the issues in bringing that to ASIC, and that goes into maintenance and those types of things. Next slide, please. The constraints. Obviously, we were only going to ever be able to give guidance. We don't give legal advice. So we were looking for something that would provide guidance only. Obviously, this is government, so there's always a constraint in terms of budget. And there's always, for any project, a constraint on timing. And obviously we needed to develop that and deliver this within the year. At all times, we wanted to keep control and ownership of the IP. There's also, though, always, even though we were gratefully assisted in the end, by the successful tendering and work by Piper Alderman, there's always going to be an impact on in-house. We've got a lot of work on in our licensing group at the moment, as a lot of people who deal with licensing know. So we wanted to try to minimise the impact on our in-house expertise to assist, but also we always knew we were going to need to provide that. But then also about IT security, because if you're providing us with information, there's a whole lot of other security and privacy issues we need to work through as well as part of that. In terms of developers, obviously we put this out for public tender. We were really looking for a collaboration of legal and technical skill sets and expertise, but we did have strong interest, and that should be from the market. And really, quite frankly, some interesting partnerships and some interesting approaches in how this tender, or how the offers against this tender were made. Which again, there were some learnings for us about that. So successful tender, a consortium that gave us the equal measure of what we were looking for in terms of the legal expertise from Piper Alderman and the technical expertise from Gronade. And had a long period of work now of this being developed in collaboration with our licensing team, as I said, my group, and thanks to my group for the work they've done in that space, the Innovation Hub and our IT. So again, this has been an interesting journey. We're looking forward to giving some insight into this, and my senior executive leader looking after our licensing group, Peng, will come back at the end and talk about some of his experiences and his observations about that. But without any further ado, I'll hand over to Andrea Beatty from Piper Alderman in Sydney. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, Andrea's just coming up, and we'll have the screen up first so people can get to see Andrea before we bring up the slides. So here's Andrea, and I'll hand over to you now. I'll put up the PC again. And that should, yep, there you go.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. As you now know, my name's Andrea Beatty. I'm a financial services partner at Piper Alderman. Partners is a national law firm, and we are ecstatic to be here today about to give you a demo of the tag tool. Now, this tag tool is developed by us doing the legal in conjunction with Gronade doing the IT innovation. So I will just briefly talk about the tag tool from a legal perspective and then give you a live demo. And then I'm going to hand over to Tomer from Gronade, who will then tell you about the IT innovation and what is innovative about the product. So basically, as you've heard from Warren, the tag tool is a chatbot intended to assist users on where to find further information as to whether or not they need a license. And when we talk about license, we're referring to either an Australian credit license or an Australian financial services license. And the tag tool answers questions within the scope of ASIC regulatory guides, information on the ASIC website, the Corps Act, the national credit legislation, and also any relevant class orders. Now, at the outset, we agreed the scope with ASIC based on likely users. So, for example, we formed the view that international insurance companies unlikely to want to use a chatbot. They'd be using their own lawyers. And we thought that the target market is very much likely to be users who are fintech, regtech, startups, etc., wanting to understand the licensing regime. Now, as Warren indicated, the tag tool gives a high-level indication as to whether or not the user is likely to require a license because their activity is a credit activity, a financial service, or a financial product. This slide just summarises the list of things we based the development of the tag tool on, and you'll see that we consequently developed a list of 1,000 keywords. As I said, the innovation and technology behind that will be explained by Tomer Garzberg later on. There are 5 possible outcomes when a user accesses a system, and they're listed on this slide. So the user ends up getting a report of their interaction with the tag tool at the end of the process, and then ASIC can access de-identified data on the users who access the tool and what they do. Obviously, for privacy reasons, the data is de-identified, so that it means that ASIC can't identify the precise personal information about users who have accessed the tool. But the key thing is at the end of going through the experience, the user gets a printout that they can either then take to their own lawyers for independent legal advice, or alternatively revisit at a later time when they've further developed their startup product. So we'll now do the prototype demo. We've got 4 examples here, but before I start, I'll say by way of background, the ACL decision tree has 137 nodes and the AFSL decision tree has 478 nodes, and I suspect you can understand why, because obviously the financial services licensing regime is far more complicated. Now I have my trusty assistant here, Chelsea Peng. The reason why she's here is because I need her help in doing the demonstration, because the tag tool, I can't talk as fast as the tag tool goes, so I need her to sort of pause in between the steps so that you can actually see what's going on. And that's saying something, because those of you who know me know that I can usually talk pretty quickly. So our first example is a business is proposing to develop a credit card comparison website, and they want to know if in order to do that, do they need an ACL? So the very first step is they need to enter their email, and the reason for that is so that they can then get the report or the summary of information at the very end. Secondly, they'll then be asked to describe their business activity. And in this case, the text input is, I want to act as an intermediary between a credit provider and a consumer. Then the user will be asked to say whether the credit involved will be provided to an individual or strata corporation. And then in this situation, the user selects yes. Next, they're asked about the purpose of credit, and there's 3 possible regulated purposes listed. The user reads through and says yes. The user is then asked whether the credit provider will be providing the service as part of their business activity, and that's the credit provider being the credit card issuer, obviously in this business scenario, and the answer to that is yes. The user is then asked whether there's going to be a charge for credit, and as credit providers are likely to charge for the use of a credit card, the user selects yes. The user is then asked whether any of the exemptions that are listed could apply, and they say none of the above on the basis of, if you read through the exemption, the classic Credit Act exemptions, you say they don't apply. The user's then asked if they're going to be performing any of the listed activities which amount to credit assistance. The user would read through and say, no, we're not doing any of the above. They're asked if they're acting as an intermediary between a credit provider and a consumer. And then as they are, the user would select yes. The user is then asked whether they fall within any of a number of listed exemptions. And one of those listed exemptions is, are you a referrer or you are a referrer? And in that case, they know that they are, so they'll select that you are a referrer. And to ensure the user is a referrer under the legislation, the user is asked whether they are merely providing contact details or web address of the credit provider. And the user says no, because they actually want to do more than that. And at that point, the user is then provided with a final response that they will likely require a licence for their activity, working through the tree, working out its regulated credit, working out that none of the exemptions apply, and finally being told they're likely to require a licence. Now, very importantly, as this tool is just to provide guidance and help someone get through the myriad and plethora of materials on the ASIC website and elsewhere about when you need a licence, there will be a list of the important things they need to look at. So that's also a very handy aspect of the tool, that straight away someone's guided to the reg guides, etc., that they need to look at to further understand what is required for their business activity. We'll now look at example 2, point of sale. Again, user inputs email. Then the user inputs, next they say what their business is, and we'll move on to the next slide. The input is, my business wants to design a credit card to sell in our department store. So now the user will be sent down the ACL decision tree, and we asked initially whether the customers of the credit card products would be individuals or strata corporations. At this point, they say yes. The user is then asked about the purpose of credit. There's a number of reasons stated. And as the customer will be using credit for any of those reasons, they select yes. The user is then asked whether lending money is part of the business activity. As it is, they say yes. The user is asked whether there's going to be a charge for credit. And as there is, they say yes. The user is then asked if any exemptions apply, and they say point of sale exemption. The user is then asked whether they're providing credit assistance as a supplier of goods or services at the point of sale, and as they are, they say yes. The user is asked if the item they're providing is an interest in land or supply of goods or services, the result of unsolicited contact. As they are not, they select no. The user is then taken to their final no that they may require an Australian credit licence as it falls within the point of sale exemption. And once again, the list of relevant... Oh, sorry, as they are not select no. Yeah, sorry, they may not require, sorry, I got that, yeah. And of course, then the usual background documents are also displayed. Now we'll look at some AFSL examples. So our first AFSL example is an electronic loyalty scheme. So this is for a coffee shop that wants to set up an app with a loyalty scheme where people can scan their phones and earn e-point credits per spend. Here the user obviously put in their email, and then they say, I want to offer a loyalty scheme to my customers. The user is then asked initially whether they are of any of the listed excluded persons. As the user is not one of these people, they select none of the above. The user is then asked whether they are providing a facility to make a financial investment, manage a financial risk, or make a non-cash payment. As they want to make a non-cash payment, they select yes. The user is then asked what kind of financial products business will involve. They select deposit and payment products. The user is asked what type of deposit or payment products they'll be using. The user says non-cash payment products. The user is then asked what type of non-cash payment product they plan to issue. The user selects a loyalty scheme. And the user is then told in the final node that loyalty schemes are not taken to be financial products and they may not require an AFSL. And again, they get the background documents that they can then read up on their answers. And of course, if someone gets confused during the process and they're not sure what a non-cash payment is, they might click the wrong box. But of course, they'll get through the decision tree process and then get the background documents to assist them in understanding the concepts, and they can always start again. So very briefly now, before I hand over to Tomer, I'll just do the last example, which is a business wanting to set up a private health scheme. Input, I want to offer health insurance. Again, you'll be sent down the AFSL decision tree, which we will just continue through. And eventually the user will say they want general insurance products. And eventually they'll get themselves to the point where they'll find out that for the final node that private health insurance is exempt from the requirement to hold an AFSL, and so they may not require an AFSL for this activity. So I'll let that just play through while I introduce Tomer. And Tomer is going to talk to us about the innovation behind the tag tool. Obviously, we did the legal work, and we're very grateful for Tomer and his partner Dimar for doing the IT work. So thank you very much.
So conscious of time, so I might not be able to go through everything in too much detail. It's okay. Okay, we've got time. I'm Tomer Garzberg, and I'm the CEO of Gronade. I've got here as well Dimar Galat. He's our Chief Computing Officer. We build world-first innovations for really big organizations such as ASIC. And at the surface level, what you might have seen is it's a chatbot. But if you look under the hood, it's actually much more than just a chatbot. A lot of off-the-shelf chatbots rely on a probabilistic AI. And what that means is that when you're typing in a statement in natural language into a chatbot, that chatbot's AI is trying to decipher the intention of that statement to a certain degree of confidence. And the only way to ever improve that level of confidence without the bot failing is you need a lot of data for it. The ASIC tag tool presents a very unique challenge in that we actually started with no data. And so if you consider that as probably the core driver of what this innovation or how innovative this solution is, you begin to understand some of the challenges that we've had to try and build this thing and make it work. The problems that you would see with a lot of off-the-shelf chatbots as well is that, I mean, you might have seen some of the functionality of the chatbot, such as, checkboxes and, other things such as, file uploads and, the ability to retain the conversation flow and the ability to build on top new features over time. That's something that's quite difficult to do with off-the-shelf chatbots. And again, this places this piece of technology really far ahead, somewhere in the realm of a personalization agent, a contextual agent, essentially about 2 years ahead of chatbots which work end-to-end currently in the market. The technology behind it and the way that we approached this was Piper Alderman developed decision trees. Essentially, these are end-to-end logical flows of how we might guide somebody to a piece of legislation or legislation advice from the moment intent is determined from a statement about what that person intends to do and guides them all the way to the end. What we then did was turn that decision logic or the the decision trees into or dialogue. And that dialogue essentially is a product of some of our experience in the market, building creative chat solutions, and really applying a lot of this knowledge into this particular project to turn things such as decision trees into dialogue. What we then did was we fed that into a chatbot engine. We used Rasa, which is an open source engine, and we were able to then construct the front end, which is the chatbot that you see. Some interesting features that we built in here, again, that are quite complex and you wouldn't actually find in a lot of off-the-shelf solutions. We built the infrastructure to make it natural language processing ready, starting without much of it and then moving into the ability to scale that up over time. We built the front-end application from scratch. We had interesting logic system that would take the decision nodes or the nodes in the decision trees and turn them into dialogue. There was links to the info sheets. The transitions between the nodes were also hard-coded. We had things like business plan uploads and checkboxes, which created their own set of complexities for this particular solution. And what we ended up with is a chatbot which is able to handle 615 questions, which translates to about 20,000 lines of code. And for reference, what you have up here is basically a screenshot of potentially one of the simplest questions that has been represented in code. So this code essentially translates from a user's intention about what they want to do, and this code actually handles the logic about what it does next as the user interacts with the bot and gets them to an end result. So we're really happy to be involved in this together with Piper Alderman, and really congratulate everyone involved for making this piece of innovation come to life. Thank you.
Hey Peng, how about you come up to the dais there in Melbourne? So Peng Li, who you were introduced to earlier as the Senior Executive Leader of Licensing, and he and his staff were involved in working with our suppliers, and he's going to provide some observations about that experience for you now. So over to you, Peng.
Thanks, Mark. I'll just hi everyone. So obviously we've been hearing about the complexities of the licensing regime. The legislation itself is very complicated, and as a consequence of that, ASIC has developed a large range of regulatory guidance and also a range of exemptions that need to interplay into how the licensing regime works. And the build for this tag tool had to accommodate a large number of those documentation and requirements. And the learnings that came out of this is that obviously the technology where it currently is at the moment, there are some inherent limitations, and the use of decision trees means that you end up with a process which can get very complicated very, very quickly. This is particularly the case when you're dealing with a regime where you have business models that interact with different parts of the regime at different points, and in some instances, some of those requirements are mutually exclusive to each other. So that creates its own challenges. There's also obviously the importance, as John Price mentioned, about having good data, and as Tomer has mentioned, in this case, there wasn't the available data to start with, but just to clarify, in that context, it was that there wasn't available usable user data. There was a large range, obviously with the regulatory guidance and legislative requirements, it's very data rich in terms of all the requirements that apply and the complexities that relate to that, and that obviously makes the framework for the way the tool has to operate. But ASIC does collect a lot of data from users, but because the way that it's been collected in the past means that it wasn't readily available to be able to be harnessed and used for the purposes of inputting into the models that Gronade and Alderman were building. But obviously it's an important consideration and something that we're taking away from this process to try and see how we can better utilise and capture that data in a more meaningful way so that data analytics can occur in a more usable manner. Also, another message that came out of this was that obviously build a tool. It's not a set and forget type of tool that we can use, because there's obviously a lot of changes in the law and changes to ASIC policy that need to accommodate those changes. And obviously next year, with the Royal Commission reforms coming through the pipeline, again, there'll be another wave of iterations that would need to be accommodated. Final point from this slide is also that the licensing team, which I lead, was also very heavily involved in the creation and the instructions to Pipers and Gronade, because obviously ASIC has got its requirements and what we set out in our guidance about what those requirements will be need to be reflected in the outcomes that the tool will generate. Thanks, Mark. Next slide. Okay. So in terms of where it goes to, so the tag tool has provided a significant glimpse into the future potential benefits that it can create for participants who want to know what's happening in relation to the activities and whether they need to be regulated, whether they need a license, or whether they can do what they want under an exemption, or basically that it's not meant to be covered by the legislative licensing regime. It also means that when people apply, because they're better informed about what their requirements are, they can either apply directly, which we get a lot of applicants who are not quite as au fait with the legislative provisions, and so there's a lot more hand-holding and assistance that ASIC has to provide in that space. Or otherwise, when they go to see service providers, such as the law firms, to get advice, they're also better informed before they go into those meetings. So that saves them time and the costs and fees involved as well. In terms of the application process, what happens with the better tool will be that we'll get applications that are of a higher standard, and then they address the things that we are interested in focusing on, and that also saves more time and costs involved with it. And then the assessment process obviously becomes more streamlined, and we can get outcomes more quickly. Thank you. Back to you, Mark.
So thanks, Peng. I'll take off the PC for the moment. Are you doing that there, or you want me to do it here? There we go. So bring up the screen. So there is a bit of time just for some Q&A. So just go back a step. Remember, what today we wanted to do was just say this was another initiative we did. This is a bit of an example of a foray into machine-readable regulation, but in this case, machine-readable guidance. And there's a number of jurisdictions around the world looking at this, including in this own country, between various departments and so on. So this was a bit of a foray for us, where I suppose we see a future. That means this needs to be part of the communication of guidance and content to the population, and to provide efficiencies for everyone, as Peng just described. So this was an example of that. We are obviously now needing to reflect on that to determine whether we can do some more work with this internally, perhaps a slice of this externally, but to determine what kind of investment we want to go on this for future years. So that's still ahead of us. So you will not necessarily see this up on our site as a beta version for you to play with in the coming month or so, but let us reflect on this about where we go. So with that, just by way of background, I wanted to ensure that people can ask some questions. So if all our presenters could just be handy, if you pop up here, and Peng down in Melbourne, if Andrea and Tomer could just come up here beside me. I already know in Sydney there's a keen question, but before coming to Sydney, I was going to sites outside of Sydney and Melbourne. Did anyone from those sites want to just chip in by pressing the button and sort of saying you have a question? Just intervene if you do. Okay, I take it no, not from those other sites. So I'm going to go to Melbourne first. So I'm just going to see Melbourne. Any questions there? Peng, you give me your eyes.
Yes.
Anyone there?
Yeah, no questions in Melbourne. Oh, sorry, yes, there is one.
Okay.
Hi, my name's Lauren. I'm an ASIC employee, just for context. I don't work in the licensing area, but I've spent some time looking at the Corps Act, and I know that quite often it's the definitions that are really important and really complicated. I wonder to what extent the tag tool's being designed to answer what does that mean if somebody was to type that in.
That's it.
Okay. Well, as we mentioned, there was 1,000 keywords, and that was the essence of what we were building, was to try and deal with some of those definitions so that people can go through the decision tree process to understand what their business is, what they're offering, and whether it requires a license or not. So yes, it was challenging. We've done our best. As I said, though, the scope was very much designed for a specific type of user. So some of the more technical exemptions that might apply to an international insurance organisation are not dealt with in the tag tool. It's very much streamlined to be the more usual, I guess, licensing query rather than the sort of very esoteric on the edge type of examples.
And the only thing I would add is, and maybe Peng, you want to make a comment too, I think in this version, I think there could well be perhaps capabilities that get built into such a thing. We were talking about hover over things so that there's plain English explanation, other forms of taxonomies being made available to people so they could more easily use it. So I think that is a real question, and one that would need to be considered, I think, in any move into production. Okay, Peng, did you have anything you want to add to that? Is that?
Yeah, no, I think that about captures it. It's just, yes, the ability to have annotations and explanations in plain English is a good way to go. At the moment, the way it's been designed is that there's obviously references to the regulatory guides, and the regulatory guides themselves obviously provide some guidance in relation to some of that terminology already.
Tamir, did you want to tell us how easy can the technology make that happen?
Well, I brought Dimmer along with me just for this.
Current state of natural language processing has actually advanced a fair bit in the last few years, and really if you have decent data sets to build on, you can recognize a lot of users' needs rather easily. Okay, so that gives us the hope that, what does non-cash payment facility mean? I have no idea. I'm not going to say that to you. I want a wallet or a cashless or a stable coin or something, and being able to pick that up and interpret that and make use of it. So I think the point's well made. So if any other questions in Melbourne, Peng?
No, Matt. Oh, sorry, yes,
Okay.
one more.
Yes, there is one more. Okay, then we'll come up to Sydney.
Down. Microphone's just coming through.
Is this going to be another ASIC plant with a question?
Yes. Yes, Mark, we take strong interest in this area. Yes, just further to the question just now, I just would like to understand from the technology's point of view how far we are from the capability of being able to to make reasons of what the customers would say. Take the scenario you mentioned just now as an example. Majority of the companies or small startups we have dealt with, perhaps they wouldn't answer the question and say we provide intermediate credit service, whether or not we need a license, because to them that is a new concept. Most likely they will tell you, this is what I do, I have a website, I have a few things in there, I'm helping the customer to understand that and helping them to pick a product or this and that. So based on that description and story, I would like to understand the technology's limitation and capability, be able to pick out what is the customer's intention in that description.
Hi. Look, the technology can do it today, but without the data that would be used to build such a technology, it's helpless. So really the question, when can we do it, is when can we collect a volume of user queries, specifically referring to particular bits of legislation that they need explained. And once we've assembled such data set, we can match them to the right bits of legislation. And the technology has been there for quite some time, in my opinion.
Yeah. And if I can also add, there's obviously, if we had the ability to do so, we could do a stage 2 and very much enhance from the basic product. Things like you say about intermediary, so you could just flash over intermediary and get an explanation of what it is in plain English. It would be heavenly to sort of, be able to do that. But this is very much a beta testing platform as a starting point at this stage.
Okay, thank you. So let's come up to Sydney, and a gentleman's been very patient here. We need to bring a microphone to you because we don't pick it up with the mics here in Sydney. So thank you.
I had kind of 2 short questions. How long did it take from start to finish to create the tool? How long was the project? And you mentioned the complexity of the tree. Say 10 levels in, one of the nodes is a regulation and that changes. What's required to update the tree?
Do you want to go?
So in terms of, sorry, what was the first question? As long as a piece of string. It was 3.5 months in terms of time, but then it required significantly more effort than we initially anticipated. Primary complexity is just being able to hold that much information about the state, as you mentioned. So 10 levels deep and so on. We say a tree, what we really mean is directed acyclical automata. So there is actually a level of complexity beyond that in terms of, well, what if you select multiple things and then you need to go back and get additional information about some of the other things that you've selected. You've seen some of the conditions. There's actually a lot of logic that is created because multiple things are selected and user has complex requirements for some reason. In terms of updating it, there is actually a very nice front-end interface where our colleagues from Alderman were able to edit these trees. And while, 500 nodes is a lot of information to display on the screen, I think they've managed. I don't know if someone else would be better than me suited to comment on that.
I might just add, from a legal point of view, it's very easy to update. If there's a legal change, you know what's hit. But the hard part is that then I've got to make Tomer do what I want, which is I want to have 25 different options and 75 different options after that. And there's only limits to what you can do from a technology point of view before you confuse the user.
What's the kind of impulse then of redoing the code once you make a change to the legislation?
So the beauty of it is that code is auto-generated. So if the tree changes, we can just regenerate the chatbot based on these changes, and that's the primary bit of innovation here, in my opinion.
That's from Data 61, unless you're wondering why he's asking all these questions.
Yeah. You can recognize it.
So thank you for that, and they're excellent questions. I think we've got time for 1 or 2 more in Sydney. I can see 2 hands. Yeah, 3 hands, 4 hands? Okay, we'll take a few of them. I think we've got time. There's no way I'm going to have closing comments of 15 minutes. We're going to get you out of here at 4:30, so don't worry about that.
This question is a little bit to the left or right, but I wondered what's next by way of a legal area for getting this or some similar kind of treatment?
Well, good question, Dimity. What is next? So, in relation to this example, where we've explored this, our vision is, subject to resources, to be able to put a version like this into production and available. So that's sort of our foray in this, and we picked this example because we thought it could have the most dividends for everybody involved sooner rather than later. Now, that's not to say there's perhaps a plethora of other scenarios that ASIC itself might want to consider. For instance, there are certain kinds of rules and certain areas where it is perhaps lends itself to being simpler and turned into this format. So that's for us to think about. But I think we've got a gentleman here from Data 61. There are colleagues at Data 61 that I think we've been in discussion with, and there is interdepartmental work going on around machine-readable regulation and alike. And I suppose we just want to feed into that, and I suppose let's see where across all forms of law and so on, whether there's opportunities for rollouts like this. I mean, the ATO has versions of this. I personally just see it being part of the future, but where to identify to do it and prioritise and to resource it, I think, is a challenging set of questions. That's my quick comments on it. Did you want to make any comments on that? No? Okay. I suppose the other area I know that there's quite a lot of attention being done to this is in UK, where both, I think, the Financial Conduct Authority in UK and the Monetary Authority of Singapore, because they are rule writers, more so than ASIC. We picked this because there is law, but we brought a lot of guidance to it, so it perhaps lent itself. But they write the rules, and they receive a lot of data through reporting as well. So they are looking at machine-readable regulation in the reporting space, so that it turns into code, so that firms can then just deploy that code and report. So their case studies they're looking at quite deeply, and I think you'll hear more about that from them early next year. Okay, yeah.
Sorry, Mark, right? I was just going to say you could see a similar sort of tool in the product design and distribution obligation area, where if you had some kind of chatbot type tool and an organisation could just complete it as part of their compliance step, would be very valuable. Fair enough. I mean, possibilities are endless, really. I mean, another example that's been thrown at us is in the credit space, the point of sale exemption is to be amended. Suffice to say, a number of providers in that space could be more likely to be requiring a license. And they're members of the community who may be less familiar with regulation. So we're looking at whether that in itself could be a useful just case study to take a slice of this branch and make it available and test that way. That could be another thing that we're looking at. So thanks, Dimity. One more question, perhaps. Yep.
Firstly, I'd like to congratulate ASIC on its initiative and for Piper Alderman's input into it. Secondly, I guess you guys can't wait for some data to go in so you can see how the AI improves it and answers questions. But my question relates to recent developments and there's been lots of discussion and articles in many, many papers about cryptocurrencies, security tokens, utility tokens, and the provision of, platforms that allow trading in those, and perhaps the requirement for any market license and things like that. I haven't looked at any of this legislation. It's the first time I only found out about this yesterday, so I'm pleased to be here. Is there some intention to perhaps get a bit more open about this and show some legislation or something that helps people, whether applicants, users, consumers, and whatever, to progress that further?
Okay, so welcome to the world of tokens, ICOs, and stablecoins. You can talk about this for a long time. So in short, you're right, it's a challenging area, and providing guidance in that space is itself a challenge. So at ASIC's front, we, like many other regulators, have issued quite a lot of guidance. I'm happy to refer that to you if you want to look at that. And we know there's people who say, hang on, that doesn't answer my question. So that's an ongoing dialogue with the industry, and we will continue to think about, because we've updated that guidance over time, whether there's more versions of that guidance. It's a little bit of a chicken and an egg, because that guidance, to be as useful as possible, really needs pretty solid case studies put to it so that you can give decent guidance back. And I think that's still where discussions with industry and participants in that industry are occurring. That's my simple answer. That's another scenario, like point of sale credit, which could usefully make use of a chatbot like this to give someone some pointers. So that's my quick answer. I mean, there are a number of regulators around the world who have issued various bits of guidance. They don't represent views on our laws, but they're interesting analogies to look at. The Financial Conduct Authority put out a paper not so long ago which had about 15 examples in them. They still sort of leave it hanging. They give you example scenarios and a viewpoint on it, but they don't go too deeply into that. So there are ways and means that regulators around the world are thinking about trying to give more guidance on this.
Is there a division or section of ASIC perhaps not?
Sure. We talk to plenty of you can come if it's you or someone else. Plenty of people approach us via the Innovation Hub. That's the email address. Say I'm thinking about doing a securities token. I want to do a securities token, financial market infrastructure, whatever it might be. I want to talk to someone about that. Probably give us a little bit more flesh than that, but that's the kind of thing, and that's what we do. We're happy to talk to people. Okay, there's one more, so we'll give that. Well, someone else has been patient. One more person, and then we'll wrap up the Q&A. Thank you.
Thanks. Am I on? Yes. So I think most of this has been covered in the questions before, so just congratulations again, and just connecting the dots. You've mentioned the ATO. It sounds like there's some great momentum, some great thinking here, some great data gathering and thinking around what can happen in the space. It'd be fantastic if we could also include maybe APRA and the ACCC in that thinking, just at an Australian-wide service level. Thank you.
Sure. So that's partly what we've got today about, and other things. This is being recorded. You can see that little light up there. I think these people know it's being recorded. Tell me if otherwise. But I mean, the whole point is that we do want this to be shared and public as possible, and you can bet your bottom dollar we're going to discuss this with other regulators as well. Okay, so with that, can you just join me in thanking our presenters? Thank you very much.